Part 6. The Psychology of Apocalyptic Belief. The human mind is a forger of fables, a weaver of webs spun from the thinnest threads of coincidence. When St. Malachy's papal prophecies collide with Revelation's fire-breathing beasts, it is not divine synchronicity we witness, it is the mind's desperate alchemy, transmuting chaos into cosmic conspiracy. Apophenia, the primal itch to find patterns in static, drives us to stitch Malachy's Petrus Romanus to Revelation's Antichrist, even as their seams fray. Confirmation bias, the mind's narcotic whispers that every pandemic, every war is a puzzle piece snapped into prophecy's grand design. COVID-19 was not just a virus. It was a Rorschach test, its splatters morphing into beasts and popes for those desperate to believe the end is scripted, not random. The brain, wired to fear the unknown, clings to these stories like a child to a nightlight, mistaking the shadows on the wall for monsters it can name. But this hunger is not innocence, it is exploitation. Institutions have long weaponized prophecy to bend the masses to their will. In the 16th century, the Catholic Church resurrected Malachy's prophecies as counter-Reformation propaganda, a divine endorsement of papal authority amid Protestant revolt. The mottos, likely forged, became celestial job applications. *C. God himself anoints our popes. Fast forward to modern evangelical pulpits, where Revelation's mark of the beast is brandished like a scarecrow to herd flocks against vaccines, climate science, or globalists. Fear, dressed in scripture, becomes a leash. The Vatican's gilded halls and megachurch stages share a script. The end is nigh. And only we can save you. The message is ancient, its medium ever-evolving, a TikTok sermon, a medieval manuscript, all peddling the same narcotic of control. Historians and psychologists dissect this allure with scalpels and sighs. Dr. Eleanor Voss, a historian of eschatology, traces the synchronizing of prophecies to humanity's terror of insignificance. When we fuse Malachy and Revelation, she says, we're not seeking truth, we're seeking authorship. If the apocalypse has a plot, we matter. If it's random, we're ephemera. Dr. Marcus Reel, a cognitive neuroscientist, pins it to the amygdala's tyranny. Under stress, the brain becomes a conspiracy theorist. It would rather believe a lie that orders the world than accept a truth that disorders it. Together they paint a chilling portrait. The prophecies are not about the end, but about power. Who wields it, who fears losing it, and who gets to write the story of our demise. Consider the COVID-19 era, a lab coat priest class clashed with armchair prophets, each side invoking Revelation or Malachy to sanctify their narrative. Vaccines became Eucharists or poison, depending on the pulpit. The Pope, framed as both saint and Antichrist, morphed into a projection screen for collective anxiety. This is not faith, it is existential theater, where every player wears a mask of meaning. Even the act of rejecting prophecy becomes a kind of dogma, a secular religion of skepticism that dismisses all mysticism as madness. Yet the darkest truth lies in the void, between the lines. These prophecies endure not because they predict the future, but because they enslave the present. To believe in Malachy's Petrus Romanus or Revelations beast is to outsource agency, to swap the burden of choice for the comfort of inevitability. The mind, terrified of freedom, shackles itself to a story where the ending is already written, the villains already cast. The Pope, the virus, the mark, they are not threats, but props in a play we've rehearsed for millennia. As the narrator's voice drops to a whisper, the screen fills with a montage, a medieval monk scribbling prophecies by candlelight, a QAnon influencer live-streaming to thousands, a psychologist's EEG mapping the brain's panic. The apocalypse is not coming, the narrator murmurs. It is here, inside us a fire we feed with every lie we mistake for light. The final image is a mirror, cracked and smeared with ash, reflecting not the viewer's face, but the question they've avoided. Do we fear the end of the world or the end of the story? The screen fades. The answer, like all prophecies, remains unwritten. The legend of St. Malachy is a ghost story, whispered through the shadowed corridors of history. In 1139, the Irish bishop embarked on a pilgrimage to Rome, a journey that would birth one of the Catholic Church's most enduring and unsettling mysteries. According to lore, Malachy collapsed in a divine trance at the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls, his mind flooded with visions of every pope to come, each reduced to a cryptic Latin motto. When he awoke, he carried 112 fragments of prophecy, a necropolis of papal epithets stretching centuries beyond his death. The list begins with Ex Castro Tiberis, from a castle on the Tiber, for Celestine II, and crescendos with its chilling finale, Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman, the last pope who will feed his sheep amid great tribulations before the eternal city's annihilation. To believers, these mottos are divine roadmaps. To skeptics, they are a masterclass in ambiguity, riddles so vague they could mold themselves to any era. Yet their power lies in their incompleteness. Their gaps inviting desperation to fill them. Malachy's prophecies vanished for 4 centuries, only to resurface in 1595, clutched in the hands of a Benedictine monk named Arnold de Weyneman. Embroiled in the Counter-Reformation's propaganda wars, critics pounce on the timing. The Church, hemorrhaging power to Protestant reformers, needed a tool to rebrand the papacy as divinely ordained, even in decline. The prophecies, they argue, were forged to flatter or condemn, their mottos retrofitted to past popes with suspicious neatness. Take Lumen in Caela, light in the sky, for Urban VII, who reigned for 12 days in 1590 as a comet blazed overhead, a detail too poetic to dismiss as chance. Yet why end the list with Petrus Romanus, a phrase that dooms the very institution it claims to sanctify? Was this prophecy or political suicide? Enter Pope Francis, the Argentine Jesuit, the reformer who shuns papal opulence, the man whose reign has collided with a pandemic, climate collapse, and the Vatican's own scandals. To conspiracists, he is Malachy's promised endgame, the Peter the Roman whose humility masks a darker destiny. His name, they note, evokes both St. Francis of Assisi, a figure of poverty, and Francis Sevilla, a missionary to the ends of the earth, as if chosen to mirror Malachy's themes of tribulation and global reckoning. When COVID-19 emptied St. Peter's Square, leaving the Pope to pray alone in the rain, the imagery felt ripped from prophecy, a shepherd isolated amid his flock's extinction. Online forums erupted, linking Francis' calls for a poorer church to Malachy's warning of Rome's ruin. Even his critics, traditionalists, appalled by his progressive bent, frame him as a disruptor, a pope who unwittingly unravels the papacy's ancient threads. But the true genius of Malachy's prophecy is its vagueness, a Rorschach test etched in dread. Petrus Romanus is not a name, but a title, a paradox. Peter, the first pope, was a Jew from Galilee, never a Roman. The phrase bends to fit any crisis. For some, it signals the rise of a Roman antipope, a schism that fractures the Church. For others, it's a metaphor. Francis, the first Jesuit pope, whose order once swore allegiance to the papacy until the end times, now presiding over its twilight. The Vatican's decline, financial corruption, dwindling congregations. The rise of secularism feels like living proof. Yet Malachy's vision thrives not in its accuracy but in its hunger. It devours context. The Black Death, the Reformation, world wars, and now, a virus that reshapes global worship. What chills is how the prophecy weaponizes hope. To claim Francis is Petrus Romanus is to imply the end has a script, a logic, a shepherd, to guide us through the storm. But delve deeper, and the cracks show. Malachy's list skips antipopes and puppets, as if history itself were being edited to fit the narrative. The Great Tribulations, he cites war, famine, plague, humanity's oldest companions recycled endlessly. Even the motto's symbolism crumbles under scrutiny. Demeditate Luna, from the half-moon, for John Paul I, who died after 33 days, supposedly under a crescent moon. Poignant, yes, but where was the moon when Pius VI was dragged from Rome in 1798, a pilgrim apostle in Napoleon's clutches? Yet none of this matters to the true believers. Prophecy, like faith, defies dissection. Malachy's words endure because they are not history, but liturgy, a ritual of fear and hope performed at the edge of oblivion. In Francis' reign, we See the prophecy's final act, a humble man in white, standing atop a crumbling institution, whispering of mercy as the world burns. Whether he is Malachy's shepherd or his pawn, the final question lingers. When the last pope falls, will we blame the prophecy or ourselves for believing it? The answer, like Malachy's scroll, remains half-written, its ink still wet with the blood of centuries. The book of Revelation unfolds like a fever dream, its pages dripping with the blood of the damned and the smoke of a crumbling world. John of Patmos's visions, penned in exile on the rocky shores of Patmos, paint an apocalypse of grotesque theater, a seven-headed beast rising from the sea, its horns crowned with blasphemous names, its hide branded with 666, the mark of allegiance to chaos. The Antichrist, a serpent-tongued usurper, seduces nations with false miracles, while the whore of Babylon, draped in scarlet and jewels, rides her monstrous steed over the corpses of saints, drunk on the wine of their martyrdom. This is not mere prophecy. It is a cosmic scream, a warning etched in divine fire. Yet for centuries, this nightmare has been dissected, weaponized, and draped over the shoulders of Rome itself, Protestant reformers, their hands still sooty from burning papal bulls, seized Revelation's imagery as a blade against the Vatican. To Luther, Calvin, and their heirs, the whore of Babylon's opulence, her gold chalices, her purple robes mirrored the Renaissance papacy's decadence. The Pope, they argued, was no shepherd but the Antichrist himself, his tiara a mockery of Christ's humility, his ex-cathedra proclamations echoing the beast's lies. The false prophet of Revelation 16, who breathes life into the beast's statue, became a stand-in for the Church's clergy, accused of idolizing tradition over truth. This was no abstract theology, it was war waged with ink and blood. The Vatican, in turn, wielded allegory as armor. Catholic scholars retorted that Revelation's horrors were not literal indictments but mystical metaphors, the whore symbolizing pagan Rome, the beast embodying imperial persecution. The Pope, they insisted, was Christ's vicar, not his rival, a beacon in the storm of sin, yet Revelation's true power lies in its relentless escalation, a divine countdown etched in sevenfold curses. The seven seals crack open one by one. The first four unleash the horseman conquest. War, famine, and death, their hooves pounding across a bleeding earth. The fifth reveals martyrs crying out beneath heaven's altar. The sixth summons earthquakes and a sun blackened as sackcloth. When the seventh seal shatters, silence grips heaven, a breath held before the storm. Then come the seven trumpets, hail and fire, seas turn to blood, a star named Wormwood poisoning the waters. Each plague is a stanza in a hymn of wrath. Crescendoing into the seven bowl soars scorching sun, rivers of blood poured out until the world chokes on its own corruption. This is not random fury but calculated revelation, a blueprint for collapse. For believers, it is a promise. Suffering has purpose. For skeptics, it is a Rorschach test, its images stretched to fit the fears of any age. The Protestants' Antichrist Pope and the Catholics' mystical allegory are two sides of the same coin, struck in the mint of human desperation. Even now, as conspiracy theorists graft Revelation's mark of the beast onto vaccine microchips and AI, the text's ambiguity thrives. It is a mirror reflecting our oldest terror that chaos reigns, and only a divine script can make it tolerable. But what if the script is wrong? What if the whore is not Rome, but power itself, corporate, political, digital, and the beast is the algorithm, its 666 humming in the servers of Silicon Valley? Revelation's genius is its refusal to die. It adapts, mutates, and sinks its teeth into every epic's anxieties. The Vatican's gilded halls and the blogger's basement forge both echo with the same question. When the final trumpet sounds, who will be left to hear it? The answer, like the book itself, remains sealed a mystery, wrapped in nightmare, waiting for the desperate to unroll its scroll. The prophecies of St. Malachy and the book of Revelation do not merely intersect, they bleed into one another, their ink mingling in the fissures of human terror. At the heart of this collision lies the Great Tribulation, a chorus of suffering that both texts hum like a funeral dirge. Malachy's final pope, Petrus Romanus, is tasked with shepherding the faithful through great tribulations, a phrase that mirrors Revelation's crescendo of plagues, wars, and famines, the four horsemen's hooves echoing in both narratives. The Black Death's mountains of corpses, the Spanish flu's spectral grip, COVID-19's silent siege. These are not just historical horrors but threads in an apocalyptic tapestry, stitched by hands across centuries. To believers, the overlap is divine choreography. To skeptics, it is the mind's desperate pirouette to find rhythm in chaos. Yet the resonance is undeniable. Both prophecies hinge on the unbearable weight of collective agony, a price demanded for humanity's sins or its salvation. Rome, that eternal city of marble and blood, stands as the axis of this convergence. Malachy's Petrus Romanus is unambiguously Roman, a pope rooted in the Vatican's sacred soil, while Revelation's whore of Babylon, a metaphor, drenched in jewels and gore, has long been interpreted as a cipher for Rome's corruption. Here, the prophecies lock eyes. One names the Pope as Rome's final custodian, the other condemns Rome as a den of decadence. The irony is exquisite. Malachy's Pope, tasked with guiding the faithful through ruin, could easily slip into Revelation's archetype of the false prophet, his prayers drowned out by the beast's roar. The Vatican's gilded halls, once symbols of divine authority, become a stage for this duality, a place where lambs and wolves wear the same robes. This is spiritual warfare waged in symbols. Malachy's shepherd and Revelation's lamb, Christ, face off against the beast, their narratives twining into a cosmic battleground. The Pope, whether cast as hero or heretic, becomes a linchpin in this duel. For Catholics, he is the lamb's vicar, holding back the tide of evil. For Protestant critics, he is the beast's puppet, his tiara a crown of thorns turned blasphemous. The clash is not theological but existential, a fight over who controls the story of the end. When Pope Francis washes the feet of refugees or condemns inequality, is he embodying the humble shepherd of Malachy's vision, or is he the false prophet of Revelation, masking tyranny with mercy? Theologians spar in sound bites. Asterisk, is Francis a reformer or a harbinger? The answer depends on which prophecy you let whisper in your ear, yet beneath the rhetoric lies a darker truth. Both texts thrive on ambiguity. Malachy's tribulations and Revelation's trumpets are vague enough to span millennia, elastic enough to snap onto any crisis. The COVID-19 pandemic, with its lockdowns and body counts, becomes a dry run for the apocalypse. Malachy's great tribulation rehearsing alongside Revelation's pestilence. Conspiracy theorists fuse the two, framing vaccine mandates as the mark of the beast, and Francis calls for global unity as the prelude to a one-world religion. The Pope, caught in this crossfire, becomes a Rorschach icon, to some a saint, to others a sleeper agent of doom. The prophecy's true alignment, however, lies in their shared obsession with control. Malachy's list imposes order on papal chaos, a divine spreadsheet tracking humanity's expiration date. Revelation's seals and bowls offer a scripted apocalypse, a horror story with a redemptive finale. Both promise that suffering is not random but authored, a comfort to those who crave meaning in the scream of a dying world. Yet this is where the mirror cracks. For if the Pope is both shepherd and pawn, and Rome both holy ground and Babylon's brothel, then the prophecies do not converge on truth, they converge on us, our need to paint the void with faces we recognize. The final question isn't whether these visions align, but whether we can survive the weight of their answer. As the screen flickers with images of burning cities and hollowed churches, the narrator's voice drops to a whisper, asterisk, the prophecies were never about the end, they're about who we become as we wait for it. A single candle gutters in the dark, its flame casting twin shadows, one shaped like a pope, the other like a beast. They dance, merge, and vanish, leaving only the echo of a question neither text dares answer. The prophecies of St. Malachy and the Book of Revelation do not merely diverge, they duel, their contradictions sharpened like daggers in the dark. At the heart of this schism lies the Antichrist paradox, a cosmic riddle that splits the prophecies. At their roots, Malachy's Petrus Romanus is cast as a tragic shepherd, guiding his flock through the great tribulations of a collapsing world. But Revelation's Antichrist is no leader. He is a shapeshifter, a deceiver who performs great signs, even causing fire to fall from heaven, Revelation 13:13, to seduce the faithful into damnation. Can the same figure be both martyr and monster? The question hangs like a noose. To Malachy's defenders, the Pope is a lamb of mauves. To Revelation's exegetes, he is the wolf in lamb's skin, his pastoral staff a scepter of lies. The paradox cuts deeper when history whispers, during the Black Death, Pope Clement VI sold indulgences to fund plague hospitals, a savior to some, a profiteer to others. Which prophecy claims him? The answer depends on who holds the knife. Timelines fracture the visions further. Malachy's prophecy unfolds linearly, a procession of 112 popes marching like pallbearers toward Rome's grave. Each motto is a tombstone. Each pontiff a stepping stone to oblivion. But Revelation's apocalypse is cyclical, its seals and trumpets spiraling through epochs, indifferent to human calendars. The seven bowls of wrath are not a sequence but a symphony, their notes echoing across millennia. Malachy's list is a countdown. Revelation's horror is a hall of mirrors. Consider 1918, as the Spanish flu and World War I ravaged Europe. Malachy's religio depopulata, religion laid waste, mirrored the desolation of empty churches. Yet Revelation's martyrs, Revelation 7:14, who have washed their robes in the blood of the Lamb, thrive in persecution, their faith unbroken. Here the timelines clash. Malachy's church falls in crisis. Revelation's church rises through it. One prophecy mourns institutional collapse. The other celebrates spiritual triumph. The role of the church becomes a battleground. Malachy's vision clings to papal legitimacy, his mottos a divine endorsement of Rome's hierarchy. But Revelation condemns institutional rot with the fury of a scorned lover, branding the church itself as Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. Revelation 17:5. This is no subtle critique. It is a demolition. The Vatican's gilded halls, its frescoed ceilings, its relics encased in gold, become symbols of betrayal. Malachy's ex Rosa Atrebatensis, from the Rose of Arras for Pope Clement VI, a nod to his French heritage, feels quaint against Revelation's searing indictment of opulence. How can the Pope be both Rome's savior and its whore? The dissonance is deliberate, a fault line between faith in institutions and faith in the divine. Case study: Religio depopulata versus the persecuted saints. The Spanish flu of 1980 offers a gruesome laboratory for these contradictions. Pope Benedict XV, branded with Malachy's Religio depopulata, presided over a church hemorrhaging. Influenced churches shuttered, priests dead, sacraments abandoned. Malachy's motto suggests divine abandonment, a withdrawal of grace. Yet Revelation 7:14 paints persecution as purification. The saints, though slaughtered, emerge radiant, their faith unbroken. In 1918, which narrative held? The church's empty pews or the quiet prayers of dying soldiers? The answer is both and neither. Fast forward to COVID-19. Pope Francis, the alleged Petrus Romanus, streamed masses to empty cathedrals, a digital shepherd tending a scattered flock. Malachy's prophecy frames this as decline. Revelation reframes it as refinement. The faithful, exiled from physical sanctuaries, worshipped in living rooms, their devotion untethered from Rome's grandeur. Here, the clash crystallizes. Malachy laments the institution's fall, while Revelation rejoices in the Spirit's survival. The final contradiction is not in the prophecies, but in us. Malachy's linear certainty comforts those who crave order. Revelation's chaotic symbolism terrifies those who fear the unknown. The Pope becomes a Rorschach blot, holy or heretic, depending on the light. As the narrator's voice tightens, the visions clash because we clash. They are not scripts for the end, but mirrors for the soul. The screen splits one last time. On the left, Malachy's scroll crumbles to ash. On the right, Revelation's lamb stands triumphant, its wounds glowing. Between them, a question lingers, as haunting as it is unanswerable. When the dust settles, will we blame the prophecies or the hands that wrote them? The pandemic's peak was a carnival of shadows, a time when ancient prophecies slithered from dusty scrolls into the glare of smartphone screens. COVID-19, with its jagged crown of spike proteins, became more than a virus. It was a cipher, a key to unlock the fever dreams of Revelation and Malachy. Conspiracy theorists, their minds wired on dread, grafted the mark of the beast onto vaccine QR codes, reciting Revelation 13:17 like incantations, no one could buy or sell without the mark. Lockdowns, those suffocating pauses in the rhythm of life, were reframed as the Great Tribulation, a prelude to the apocalypse foretold by both Malachy's Petrus Romanus and John's lurid visions. The air crackled with paranoia. Grocery stores became battlegrounds, masked faces turned into portents, and every syringe gleamed with eschatological menace. This was not science, but alchemy, fear transmuting fact into myth. Pope Francis, the shepherd of Malachy's prophecy, found himself trapped in the storm's eye. His pleas for global solidarity, no one is saved alone, collided with conspiracists' snarling narrative of a new world order. To QAnon disciples, his calls for vaccine equity were Judas kisses, his encyclicals on climate change, blueprints for tyranny. The Pope's humble Fiat 500, his frayed cassock, his embrace of migrants all were twisted into proof of a grand deception. Malachy's Petrus Romanus, they hissed, was not a pastor but a puppet, his soft words a velvet shroud over the beast's agenda. Even his isolation in the Vatican, praying in an empty St. Peter's Basilica, was weaponized. C. He knows the end is near. Yet Francis' true sin was his humanity, a leader clinging to hope in a world starved of it, his vulnerability mistaken for complicity. The soundscape of the era became a dissonant hymn. Masked protests roared outside capitals, their chants, my body, my choice, clashing with distorted loops of Revelation's verses. The number of the beast is 666. Papal masses, broadcast from hallowed cathedrals, echoed with eerie silence, broken only by the rustle of vestments and the click of rosary beads. Conspiracists layered these sounds into manifestos, Gregorian chants spliced with ventilators. Francis' sermons warped into ominous ASMR. The effect was visceral, a sensory overload that bypassed reason and drilled into primal fear. But beneath the noise lay a darker truth. COVID-19 did not birth these theories, it exposed them. The pandemic was a mirror reflecting humanity's oldest terror of the unseen, the uncontrollable. Malachy and Revelation, once confined to theology seminars, became scripts for a global psychodrama. The mark of the beast was never about microchips. It was about the mark we leave on ourselves when we trade trust for tribulation. The Pope, meanwhile, became a Rorschach icon. His compassion read as either sainthood or subterfuge. As the world emerges, blinking from the pandemic's shadow, the prophecies remain not as roadmaps, but as relics of our hunger for meaning. The virus did not end the world. It revealed how badly we need to believe it will. And in that revelation, both the shepherd and the beast endure, twin specters in the theater of our dread, waiting for the next crisis to resurrect them. The human mind is a forger of fables, a weaver of webs spun from the thinnest threads of coincidence. When St. Malachy's papal prophecies collide with Revelation's fire-breathing beasts, it is not divine synchronicity we witness, it is the mind's desperate alchemy, transmuting chaos into cosmic conspiracy. Apophenia, the primal itch to find patterns in static, drives us to stitch Malachy's Petrus Romanus to Revelation's Antichrist, even as there seems fray. Confirmation. Bias ***, the mind's narcotic whispers that every pandemic, every war is a puzzle piece snapped into prophecy's grand design. COVID-19 was not just a virus. It was a Rorschach test, its splatters morphing into beasts and popes for those desperate to believe the end is scripted, not random. The brain, wired to fear the unknown, clings to these stories like a child to a nightlight, mistaking the shadows on the wall for monsters it can name. But this hunger is not innocence, it is exploitation. Institutions have long weaponized prophecy to bend the masses to their will. In the 16th century, The Catholic Church resurrected Malachy's prophecies as counter-Reformation propaganda, a divine endorsement of papal authority amid Protestant revolt. The mottos, likely forged, became celestial job applications. *C. God himself anoints our popes. Fast forward to modern evangelical pulpits, where Revelation's mark of the beast is brandished like a scarecrow to herd flocks against vaccines, climate science, or globalists. Fear, dressed in scripture, becomes a leash. The Vatican's gilded halls and megachurch stages share a script. The end is nigh, and only we can save you. The message is ancient, its medium ever-evolving, a TikTok sermon, a medieval manuscript. All peddling the same narcotic of control. Historians and psychologists dissect this allure with scalpels and sighs. Dr. Eleanor Voss, a historian of eschatology, traces the synchronizing of prophecies to humanity's terror of insignificance. When we fuse Malachy and Revelation, she says, we're not seeking truth, we're seeking authorship. If the apocalypse has a plot, we matter. If it's random, we're ephemera. Dr. Marcus Reel, a cognitive neuroscientist, pins it to the amygdala's tyranny. Under stress, the brain becomes a conspiracy theorist. It would rather believe a lie that orders the world than accept a truth that disorders it. Together, they paint a chilling portrait. The prophecies are not about the end, but about power, who wields it, who fears losing it, and who gets to write the story of our demise. Consider the COVID-19 era. A lab coat priest class clashed with armchair prophets, each side invoking Revelation or Malachy to sanctify their narrative. Vaccines became Eucharist or poison depending on the pulpit. The Pope, framed as both saint and Antichrist, morphed into a projection screen for collective anxiety. This is not faith, it is existential theater, where every player wears a mask of meaning. Even the act of rejecting prophecy becomes a kind of dogma, a secular religion of skepticism that dismisses all mysticism as madness. Yet the darkest truth lies in the void, between the lines. These prophecies endure not because they predict the future, but because they enslave the present. To believe in Malachy's Petrus Romanus or Revelations beast is to outsource agency, to swap the burden of choice for the comfort of inevitability. The mind, terrified of freedom, shackles itself to a story where the ending is already written, the villains already cast. The Pope, the virus, the mark, they are not threats, but props in a play we've rehearsed for millennia. As the narrator's voice drops to a whisper, the screen fills with a montage, a medieval monk scribbling prophecies by candlelight, a QAnon influencer live-streaming to thousands, a psychologist's EEG mapping the brain's panic. The apocalypse is not coming, the narrator murmurs. It is here, inside us, a fire we feed with every lie we mistake for light. The final image is a mirror, cracked and smeared with ash, reflecting not the viewer's face, but the question they've avoided. Do we fear the end of the world, or the end of the story? The screen fades. The answer, like all prophecies, remains unwritten. The final frame lingers like a curse, a skeletal Vatican column. Its marble veins cracked and weeping ash, superimposed over a metropolis engulfed in flames. The caption bleeds into view. Is the end a revelation? Or a reflection? As a lone church bell tolls, each strike shuddering through the silence like a hammer to glass. The sound fades, leaving only the echo of a whisper, warped and guttural. Finis venit. It is not a warning, but a taunt. The prophecies of Malachy and Revelation, for all their fire and fury, were never about the world's demise. They are about us, the architects of our own dread, the playwrights scripting our panic into poetry. What chills is not the thought that these visions might be true, but that we need them to be. The crumbling column, the burning city, they are mirrors, reflecting our terror of a universe without narrative, a void where chaos reigns and death is just death. Malachy's papal list and Revelation seals are not divine roadmaps, but psychological armor forged to shield us from the unbearable truth that suffering is random. Power is fragile, and the only apocalypse that matters is the one we carry inside. The church, the conspiracies, the clamor for meaning, they are rituals to ward off the silence, yet the silence always wins. The bell's last note dissolves, the flames gutter to embers. All that remains is the question hanging like smoke. Do we crave the end because it is ordained, or because ordaining it lets us pretend we matter? The prophecies crumble, but their shadows linger, etched into the walls of our psyche. The screen fades to black. Somewhere, a skeptic laughs. A believer prays. And the whisper loops, endless in the dark, finis venit. Finis venit, the end is coming. Or perhaps it is already here, not in fire or plague, but in the stories we cling to, desperate to forget we are alone.